Morning. Can you hear me? Is this on? All right. It's nice to be here. I know I haven't been here for a while. And please bear with me today. I have a voice now, but by the end of the service I may not. I did not earlier in the week. Okay, I'd like to welcome any guests who are visiting with us today, or if you have been here and before, we really want you to come back. This is a great church. We do have bags for our first-time visitors, so could you please raise your hands? If you are new for the first time, it's okay, don't worry about it. All you're going to do is get a gift. I think we have one back there, don't we? Yeah. Don't be shy. And also please sign the red attendance book so we can have a record of your visit today. As always, put your cell phones on mute or vibrate or whatever, or off. Sometimes it helps, you know, like if you have a baby cry in the middle of the sermon, then it's time to stop, but it's nice not to have a cell phone ring. A reminder that all golfers who wish to participate in the golf scramble with Venice UCC on Saturday, November 3rd, please see Mike Borkey after the service. I think that Joe's wife is, Catherine, is involved usually in setting those up. And Louise, will you come and speak to us about the 12 keys?
Good morning. Also, not only am I going to speak to you about the 12 keys, but I also want to remind everybody that we have the lunch bunch, unless I've got the wrong date, it is Tuesday at 12:30.
No, it's not on the list, but it's in the...
Okay. That's what thank you. So, a week from Tuesday will be our lunch bunch, and everyone is always welcome. This time we're going to meet at the Rice House, which is where the Winn-Dixie is, okay? All right, what I want to speak to you about, and I have given a slip on each side that's yellow that you will please pass right on to the back, row by row. We want everyone to sign up. We need to know how many are coming because of the food. And this is regarding our one-day retreat that we're going to have for the 12 keys. So now I'll start with my little speech. I want to invite you to attend the planned resort. Yes, we're going to have fun. Come. All-day retreat to help plan the strategic plan, a long-range plan for our church. Representatives of the different bodies of the UCC meet once a month to guide us in the right direction, and we enjoy each other's company. So, as they say, I'm only asking you to come for one day. Now we want each of you to plan to give one day, November 10, Saturday, 8:30 to 3:30, for a retreat at the Jockey Club Rec Hall. All you do is take Ellington right here at the corner over to Pan American, and you just go up Pan American a couple of blocks, and there's the rec hall. So you can't say you can't find it, okay? And again, it's 8:30 to 3:30. If anyone is coming that has children and plans to bring them, just let me know, and we will have a sitter there for the children. They'll be in a separate little room. They have a library where they allow children to play games and so forth while we're having our meeting in the main room. Bring your life experiences and past church involvements to this all-day meeting. Using the 12 Keys to an Effective Church, that's the name of the book, it will be our basis for the way we're planning and thinking. And don't tell me I won't be alive in 10 years. It doesn't matter. We need your input, and it does matter, but you know. Yeah. Remember that there were others that paved the way for us and gave us a building to sit in and so forth. So we need to be responsible and make every effort. Do come and enjoy fellowship and get better acquainted. We want your input from everyone. A great deal of the time and effort has gone into the preparation already, and the youth will serve lunch, so we need those reservations. And does anybody have any questions? If you've already signed up, it's fine. This is for people that haven't. I don't want to tell you, go in and sign in the fellowship hall there, and then you get to talking and forget to do it. So I'm passing it. So thank you very much.
I'd like to say one thing about it. It is really important. This isn't just like something we're doing. This is the focus of an interim, and this will determine the direction that this course goes, not only during the interim, but for your future pastor. And you know, a lot of churches, when they do this more than once, and I think Joe has been really great in terms of focusing it, so it's just really important that people show up.
This represents 16 hours already. We have 36 more people to put on. These are your dots. This is where you live in proximity to the church, which will be part of our little discussion on planning for the church. So.
Okay, Becky?
Good morning. You will notice in your bulletin of the pending congregational meeting on Sunday, November 4th. A bylaws committee was appointed and met at the request of council. We have met monthly or more often for the past year. The proposed changes reflect the current needs and some housekeeping areas of the current church bylaws passed in 2005. The changes came from recommendations from various boards and Pastor Ledoux. The proposed changes have been reviewed and approved by council. Copies of the proposed changes, look like this, are available in the narthex. One to a family, and if you can remember, please, if you take them, please remember to bring them to the congregational meeting on November 4th.
I know that you and Martha have worked very hard on that, and Esther, for a few months now. Okay, Norma.
Good morning. It's that time of year again. We're going to do the Christmas for the homeless, but we have to get prepared. For those who knit, I need hats and mittens for those wonderful children who are homeless out there in the woods. We got to keep them warm. And for all of everyone else, anytime you're shopping, try to remember that we need toothbrushes and toothpaste and small things of soap and shampoos and feminine hygiene things, because we're going to start collecting in November. Now, you all know, those, I see some new people back, the Women's Fellowship has decided to, we have all new tables in our dining room, and we need chairs to go with them. Our chairs are really, well, they're 50 years old, they've been around a while, and they need to be replaced. We have volunteered to spend $2,000, and we have been doing quite well in our endeavor. We had a dinner, we made $617, and then we just had a soup and sandwich that we made $656 on. It was incredible. We made more money on the soup and sandwiches than we did on the dinner. So that's a total of $1,274. We're reaching our goal of $2,000. And Jersey Joe is coming, and that's the next event. We're going to have a concert, and the women are going to serve dessert and beverages, and the date is November 25th. The tickets will be made this week, and we'll be selling them next week. It's $5, and it's all the profits go to the chairs. Now, if everybody can take a look at the chairs, I would like you to vote. This is the first go-round. There's 3 chairs available at this point in time. We've gone El Cheapo, we've gone like middle of the road, and then we've gone to the Cadillac. But I'll forewarn you all, the chair that's $20 or $2,000, and what the women thought was going to be okay, it's really not. But you check it out, you vote. The chairs are going to cost us more than $2,000 for sure. But you know what? This is something that's going to last this church another 50 to 100 years. And the best part of it is when you get a better chair, it's got a lifetime warranty, and Sandra and her husband are helping me, and the women get good pricing on these chairs. One chair came from right out of Sarasota. And so anyway, I'd like you to vote on 1, 2, or 3. There's a basket. Just write a number on it and throw it in the basket after you sit on the chairs. Again, it's the first go-round. We hope to have more chairs to choose from. So we want you to have all your input, because this is your church. Thank you.
Okay, a couple more announcements and meetings and activities this week. Monday is the deadline for newsletter articles and information. Also on Monday is the Turning Point Middle School and High School Youth Group at 6:30. And Tuesday is the Backyard Bash meeting at 6:30, and Friday is Just Kids at 6 p.m. I think all of this is here at the church. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add to this thing? Okay, so let us worship God in God's strength and beauty. And can you please stand and join me in hymn number 206, The Church is One Foundation. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Well, you don't have to stand yet, but let us worship God in all God's strength and beauty. Please join me in number 206, The Church is One Foundation, and please stand.
Came and saw her, to be his holy Good morning. We'll now read the Litany of Approach and Prayer. Please read with me. Because you have made the Lord your refuge, the Most High your dwelling place, no evil shall befall you, no scourge come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guide you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent you will trample under your foot. Those who love me I will deliver. I will protect those who know my name. When they call to me, I will answer them. I will be with them in trouble. I will rescue them and honor them. With long life, I will satisfy them and show them my salvation.
I heard about his healing, of his cleansing cloud revealing, how he made the lame to walk again and caused the blind to see. And then again, dear Jesus, come and heal my broken spirit. And somehow Jesus came and sent to me the victory.
The Old Testament reading, Isaiah chapter 52, verses 10 through 15, and chapter 53, verses 1 through 8. The Lord has bared his holy arm before the eyes of all the nations, and all the ends of the earth shall see the salvation of our God. Depart, depart, go out from there. touch no unclean thing. Go out from the midst of it. Purify yourselves, you who carry the vessels of the Lord. For you shall not go out in haste, and you shall not go out in flight. For the Lord will go before you, and the God of Israel will be your rear guard. The suffering servant. See, my servant shall prosper. He shall be exalted and lifted up, and shall be very high. Just as there were many who were astonished at him, so marred by his appearance, beyond human semblance, and his form beyond that of mortals. So he shall startle many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths because of him. For that which had not been told them they shall see, and that which they had not heard they shall contemplate. Who has believed what we have heard? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a young plant, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by others, a man of suffering and acquainted with infirmity. And as one from whom others hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him of no account. Surely he has borne our infirmities and carried out our diseases. Yet we accounted him stricken, struck down by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the punishment that made us whole, and by his bruises we were healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have all turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of all. He was oppressed, and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By a perversion of justice he was taken away. Who could have imagined his future? For he was cut off from the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people.
Try one of these chairs here. Of course, I took the nicer one. I think this is the Cadillac version because it's the softest. All right. Can you all hear me? All right. I want to read you guys a story. And the name of this story is called The Fall of Freddie the Leaf. Is room down here? Guys, shut it down a little bit. Let's go on down just a tad. All right, I just got back from up north, okay? That's how come I lost my voice. I'm not used to the cold. My blood has thinned. But I will tell you something. You guys are from Florida. How many people have seen autumn leaves? You've seen them, Tatiana, huh? You've seen them? About almost everybody, 2 or 3 haven't. Well, what happens up north is different from here because it gets colder. And what happens is the leaves change into beautiful, beautiful, beautiful colors, and they fall off the trees. And then they get winter, which is why all these people come here instead, because they don't like the cold. But at any rate, a lot of people miss the beautiful leaves. So I want to read you a little story about Freddie the Leaf, okay? It's called The Fall of Freddie the Leaf. Spring had passed, and so had summer. Freddie the Leaf had grown large. His midsection was wide and strong, and his 5 extensions were firm and pointed. He had first appeared in spring as a small sprout on a rather large branch near the top of a very, very tall tree. Freddie was surrounded by hundreds of other leaves just like himself, and soon he discovered that no 2 leaves were alike, even though they were from the same tree. Alfred was the leaf next to him, Ben was the leaf on his right side, and Claire was the lovely, beautiful leaf hanging overhead. They had all grown up together. They had all learned to dance in the spring breezes, bask lazily in the summer sun, and wash off in the cooling rains. But it was Daniel who was Freddie's very best friend. He was the largest, just like you. He was the largest leaf on the limb, and he seemed to have been there long before anybody else. It appeared to Freddie that Daniel was also the wisest among them. And it was Daniel who told them that they were part of a tree. It was Daniel who explained that they were growing up in a public park. And it was Daniel who told them that the tree had strong roots that were hidden in the ground below. And because Daniel went to church every Sunday and learned all about Jesus, he explained to him that those roots were grounded in God, and that Jesus was the trunk, and that we were the branches, and these leaves were fortunate to be a part of God's world. He explained about the birds who came to sit on every branch and sing morning songs, and he explained all about the moon and the stars and the seasons. Freddie loved being a leaf. He loved his branch, his light leafy friends, his place high in the sky, and the wind that jostled him around. He loved the sun's rays and the moon's soft white shadows. He loved summer especially because the days were long and the warm nights were peaceful and dreamy. And there were people who came to the park in the summer, and they often came and sat under Freddie's tree. And Daniel told him that giving shade was part of his purpose, that he had a purpose in life. Well, what's a purpose? Freddie asked. A reason for being, Daniel answered. To make things more pleasant for others is a reason for being. To make shade for old people who come to escape the heat of their homes is a reason for being. To provide a cool place for children to come and play, and a place for picnickers to picnic under the tree with their pretty red and white tablecloths. These were his reasons for being. Freddie especially liked the old people because he liked to sit there as they sat very quietly on the cool grass and talked about days past and their beautiful memories of their lives with their families when they were younger. The children were fun because they liked to play on the swing set, and they went high, high, high up towards their branches, and they laughed and had so much fun. But soon Freddie's time was going to change because it was now October, and it was starting to get a little cold. And what happened in the morning was they were coated with this white kind of watery stuff called dew. And it sparkled in the morning sun, but it was kind of cold in the morning. And again, it was Daniel who explained that this was the first frost, and that soon fall and winter would come. Well, almost at once, the entire park was filled with beautiful colors of orange and red and gold. It kind of looked like a Trix cereal package. All those different colors. It's just gorgeous. And Claire was blazing red, Ben was bright orange, Alfred was deep yellow, Daniel was deep purple, and Freddie was all of that, red, gold, and blue. How beautiful everybody looked. Freddie and his friends looked like a rainbow. Well, why did we turn different colors? Some of us are red, some of us are yellow, some of us, I guess we're not black, but we do see that in the people, don't we? Well, we found out that they were all on the same tree, but each of them was different. Each of us is different. We have different experiences. We face the sun differently. We cast the shade differently. Well, why do we have so many different colors? Daniel said matter-of-factly. Daniel told Freddie that this wonderful season was called autumn. One day a very strange thing happened. There were these breezes, and they were pushing everybody, and the dance no longer became this fun, lively, happy experience because people were getting pushed and pulled from their stems, and they were very, very angry, all these leaves. And this caused some of the leaves to be torn off the branches and to drop slowly to the ground. And all the leaves became very frightened. What's going on? What's happening? They whispered. It's what happens in the autumn, Daniel told them. It's that time for the leaves to change their home. It's time for a change. Well, what will happen to us? Asked Daniel. Well, asked Freddie. Well, yes, you too will change. You will have to maybe go to school. Go to school? Why would I go to school if I'm a leaf on a tree? Well, those are some of the things that you have to do in life. Just like those people. We might fall down on the ground. We could get hurt. It's sort of like maybe the leaves won't go to school, but you guys go to school, right? And maybe it's a new experience going to a new classroom. Or maybe your father lost his job and your mom's upset because there isn't a whole lot of money. Or maybe you have to move and you have to meet new friends. Or maybe you're trying something new out, like learning how to dance, and you're a little frightened to do that. And so what Daniel was trying to explain to Freddie is that everybody goes through changes, and you will go through a change too. But because you are connected to this big tree, this root that is grounded with a big trunk in Jesus and God, that you'll be okay. Well, soon the tree was almost bare. And Freddie told Daniel that he was afraid. He was afraid that maybe he might actually die if he fell off that tree and got hurt badly enough. And he said not to be afraid because spring would come and so would summer, and there would be natural changes, and you too would have a change, and you could be something so much greater. Someday there is something stronger than the tree, and it is life. And that lasts forever, and we are all a part of that life, whether we're a tree or a leaf or a human being. And no one knows for sure about it because it's such a great mystery. Then what has been the reason for all this? Freddie continued to question. We're here today, and then we might fall off the tree and go through a major change. Daniel answered in this matter-of-fact way, it's been about the sun and the moon. It's been about the happy times together. It's been about the shade and the old people and the children. And it's been about the colors in autumn. It's been about the seasons. Isn't that enough? That afternoon, in the golden light of dusk, Daniel let go. He fell effortlessly. He seemed to smile peacefully as he fell. Goodbye for now, Freddie, he said. Then Freddie was all alone. He was the only leaf left on his branch. He was totally alone because he was afraid to let go. He was afraid to trust God. So the first snow came, and it was cold, but it was soft, white, and gentle. And Freddie found himself losing his color. He became brown. And at dawn the wind came, and there was Freddie. And then he started to fall. And he felt himself float gently and quietly and softly downward. And as he fell, he saw the whole tree for the first time, how strong and firm it was. He was sure that it would live for a long time, and he was proud to be a part of it. He landed in a nice, soft clump of snow. And in his new position, he was very comfortable, and he fell asleep. And he knew that his friend Daniel told him that he would go on to bigger and better things as long as he kept his faith in God, because there are only new beginnings. So did you like that story? It's a little strange, isn't it, about a leaf? But I think the leaf is us, don't you? And the changes that we go through in life. And that all we got to do is know that Jesus is our best friend, okay? And that God is always there for us, no matter what changes we go through. And then we can have a beautiful, beautiful life together. So let me give you these for Sunday school. I hope I have enough. We have so many kids today. Daniel, since you were in the story, could you toss those out for me to each person? Thank you, Daniel.
35 through 45. The request of James and John. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to him and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They replied, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink, you will drink, and the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared." When the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be their servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many."
When we went in, our grandmother lay curled up, nearly killed with old age. She got up and walked with a cane of white shell to a room at the east. She came out again somewhat stronger. Then, supported by a cane of turquoise, she went into the south room. She came back walking unaided. She went next into a room at the west. She came out a young woman. She went into the north room and returned a young girl so beautiful that we bowed our heads in wonder. This is a writing that Terry Tempest Williams wrote in her book, Pieces of a White Shell, The Journey to Navajo Land. It is a Native American personification of Mother Nature through all the stages of life, from the very, very, very old to the beauty of the very young. As we face our own life cycles, wherever we are within that life cycle, we need to learn how to live our lives in a kind of spirituality that is above and beyond, that is so rooted in God that we accept life challenges with grace. Whether we are a child going to kindergarten that we were talking about today in the children's sermon, or a young man going off to college for the first time, or a young girl going off to war, and there are young girls going off to war now, or whether we're an old man facing a debilitating disease, we have to have the strength within ourselves and the dignity to let go with maturity. To let go as that child had to let go as they were becoming something new, not with the fighting immaturity of a child. Well, in our scripture passage of Mark today, Jesus is talking to John and his brother. And these men are very young. Jesus was in his 30s, and I'm assuming they were too. That's where they were at within that life cycle. They were at a time of searching, of trying to understand what Jesus was all about. And 3 times in the passage of Mark, in the last 3, this Sunday and the 2 Sundays before, Jesus has said over and over again that he's going to die. And they don't get it. They just don't get it. And every time they ask him, they just don't get it. So Jesus decides to take his disciples to Capernaum, which is a fishing village on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee. It had a population of 1,500 people. And the scholars, some of them believe that Jesus actually had a home in Capernaum. I doubt that, but they did know for sure that Peter had a home in Capernaum. And so when he was giving his lesson to these two disciples in particular, and to all the disciples throughout the Gospel of Mark, they probably went to Peter's home. Now, this home was located between a synagogue and the lake shore, and it was one amongst many private homes. There was a courtyard to the north and to the south. There was a plaster floor and a brick oven. And much of the early church after Jesus' death took place in the home. Ecclesia, or ecclesiastical council, or ecclesia, that a word that we use much in the words of the church, meant house church. So Jesus was taking the disciples there to teach them. Well, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, asked Jesus to do whatever they asked. They wanted to sit, one at Jesus' right hand and one at Jesus' left hand. Why? Because they thought Jesus had power. And they were two of the disciples that were able to witness on the mountaintop the transfiguration of Jesus. And somehow they felt that if Jesus had so much power, then they were the most beloved, supposedly in their minds, of Jesus' disciples, so they too should have power. And that was their focus. They wanted to know who was the greatest. Well, Jesus looked at them like they were nuts. He said, no, that's not what we're doing here. What we're really talking about here is not power. He didn't see himself as a powerful, ruthless leader or ruler that was going to get all these great armies together and do these things and acquire all this wealth. That wasn't the power that Jesus was talking about. And he said to his disciples, you got it wrong. The first shall be last. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. That means that even though you sat with me on that mountaintop and witnessed the transfiguration, you at that point were first. Well, guess what? You're going to be last. And not only are you going to be last, but if you do become first at some point, then you're going to be a slave or a servant to all. These disciples were in competition with one another. They had egos. They had puffed up egos. They weren't thinking about giving. They were thinking about their own place within the kingdom of God. They were thinking about their own importance. And Jesus said, no, that's not what we're about here. What that means in our world is that the unpopular becomes popular. The marginalized within society finds a place. The sick, the weak, the lost find grace. The hooker ate with Jesus at the table, and he said, mend your ways, and gave her a chance. All the people that anybody else in society would judge, Jesus welcomed and accepted. So power, prestige, and status quo really didn't mean anything to Jesus. So what happened, according to Barbara Brown Taylor in her sermon, she talks about power being fragile and temporary. There's a lot of anxiety on the top. Why? There's a fear that someone's going to displace you if you're on the top. So there's a lot of competition with people on the top. And as one grows older, what is the fear? The fear is age discrimination, that someone's going to lose their place and position of power by someone who is younger. But Jesus said, we're not talking about that kind of power, that the power is on top. No, we're talking about an ultimate trickle-up effect. They were talking about an ultimate, within the kingdom of God, of a trickle-down effect, in which the power would kind of trickle down to the little common people. And Jesus said, no. What we're talking about is it trickles up. The power is on the bottom. The people on top are without power, and the people on the bottom are with power, and that one is going to trickle up. And he turned everything upside down. Taylor says we must transform the world not from the top down, but from the bottom up. And if we are able to transform the world from the bottom up, we are then given the power from God is not to control and manipulate, it is to serve. And that is when we are given God's abundance. We are given God's grace, and that is to serve and to give. Whether we look at politics as we approach an election, whether we look at the church, and the church is filled with egos needing all this power and center of attention, who seem to create so much conflict amongst themselves. Or whether we look at the corporate world, we can try to acquire wealth. We can try to find a place in the community. We can try to have a beautiful home. We can try to get a promotion. There's nothing wrong with all of that. What's wrong with that is when it becomes an end in and within itself, that's all that's important to us. And Jesus is saying that's not what is important. What is important is believing in God. And what is belief in God but receiving power from God? And by receiving power from God, you have the strength and the capability to face your life with maturity and acceptance, and you give it away, and you give it to other people. Power corrupts. Power is controlling and manipulative. It is dishonest. But the real power comes from God. And if we claim our power in God, not only do we give it away, but we find that if we hold on to our life and hold on to everything, we don't have anything but ourselves. If we have the ability to let go of that, to give it away, and as Jesus said, to lose our life is when we find it. When you give of yourself is when you find your true self. So what happens to the most powerful in life? Back of the line. Go to the back of the line. What happens to the pimply-faced nerd who's been rejected by the in-clique? Well, I'll tell you something. That kid, or maybe that kid got bullied in school, that kid in their suffering probably reached out in faith to God because they didn't know what else to do. That kid is riding on Jesus' shoulders. And that kid who is at the head of that clique is out. Why? All they have are themselves. They don't know what it's like to care about other people. All they care about are themselves and being the one and only. So then the disciples, after they heard that, they said, well, if you're not going to have us sit on the right and the left hand because you don't see power in that way, well, who will decide our position in God's kingdom? And Jesus very simply said, that's not my decision, that's God's decision. It's interesting that when Jesus could have the power, he always gave it back to God. He never built himself up on a huge pedestal. Jesus knows that he's going to die, and he knows that there's a reason for it. And the disciples didn't get it. The disciples did not understand about Jesus' death being the ransom for many. They did not understand the reason for his death. They didn't even believe he was going to die. They themselves ultimately did not die on a cross. However, in the first century, many of them were martyred, many of them were killed, and many of them were beheaded for their faith in Jesus Christ. Jesus was such an incredible threat to the powerful that no king anywhere wanted anybody to believe in Jesus, because ultimately they did fear that they were going to lose their kingdoms and lose their power. The importance of Jesus in foreseeing his death for the disciples was to understand how power really works. Understand the negative corruption of power and understand the power from God. And to understand what a death would mean. If Jesus was to die for them, then what was going to happen within themselves? They themselves would have a form of death, even though they were not killed on that cross. And that death would be, well, first there was sadness that they had lost Jesus. But second, it was a kind of death in which it could lead to some form of transformation. If they were to identify with the crucifixion and the resurrection which was to come, they had to learn how to die to themselves. They had to learn what it meant to let go of the power so that they could then become selfless. We're so busy running around in our world trying to secure it for ourselves that if we let go of all that and simply give our lives over to Jesus, then we then focus on all these other people and what they themselves need. And that is when it comes back to us. That is when the love of God begins to flow through us. So they had to first learn how to die to self and become selfless. And not only did they have to die to themselves, they had to learn how to die to the world. Because in the world is when they found their center of stability. It is in the world that they found their identity of who they were and what they were about. Maybe they were a doctor, maybe they were a lawyer, maybe they were a mother. Everything revolved around what their identity was in the world. And he's saying, no, it doesn't matter what you do, it matters how you do it and what kind of person you are. And I'll tell you something, I was raised in a somewhat upper middle class, and I married into a very different milieu than all that. I married into the working class, and I found within the professional world, everybody was hung up with their identity of who they were. Everything was determined on what they did with their lives. Their entire identity was that. And one thing that I found with people who were farmers, people who were working class, they could care less. What they cared about were what kind of people you are. You can be the greatest doctor in the world, but you could maybe not really give a damn about anybody. Or you could be a garbage collector, and yet when you were out there doing that, you were saying hi to people, you were asking them about their lives, and that person was doing more good than the doctor who was too busy getting all that money for himself. And that isn't to say that doctors are bad or garbage collectors are good. It just doesn't matter what you do in life. It matters how you do it and who you are within it. And that's what Jesus was talking about. You got to let go of your power, and you got to accept the power from God. And if you do that, you can't help but begin to live the way God intended you to live. Marcus Borg said, the radical recentering in which you die to self and you die to the world because you become so rooted in God brings about a change so sharp that it is described as dying to an old life and being born to a new life, in which the Spirit of God takes root within you. Not only that, Jesus was talking about a restructuring within society between the haves and the have-nots, between the affluent nations and the developing countries. And what's really interesting was in Jesus' time, the child was devalued the most. You know, we go around in this church and we have a child that is baptized, and when the child is baptized, we all walk around the congregation and we're so happy to bring that child into our midst. Not so in Jesus' time. They were on the bottom of the heap. They were the low man on the totem pole. And this existed until the medieval times. Thomas Aquinas, which he was a philosopher in the 1200s, taught that in a raging fire, a husband was first to save his father. Didn't matter how old his father was, he was to first save his father. Then he was to save his mother. Then he was to save his wife. And last, he was to save his child. So if he got them all out and didn't have time to get the child out, well, tough cookies. I guess it's just a child, so who cares? And that's how they saw it. And Jesus said, no, I don't think so. This child is the most important to me. And I think that's how we look at it, or at least we try to look at it. You look at this church and how it is growing and evolving. You look at how now there is a youth group called The Turning Point. You look at what happens for Vacation Bible School in this church. We value children. But not so in Jesus' time. And so Jesus is telling the disciples, no, those children are not on the bottom. They are on the top. If you accept that child, you accept me. It didn't matter who it was. Jesus always went to the bottom and lifted him up. If he were to walk in that door right now, the most important people to him would be the unemployed or the homeless. The most important to him would be the marginalized within society. The most important to him would be the drug addicts and the alcoholics. Why? He wanted to help them. He wanted to show them a better way. Because everything to him was God. So the disciples said, who is this man that gives all this power to these people that we don't normally give power to? Who is this man who gives all this power to these little children? And Jesus responded with, it is through these children that you might have peace. President Jimmy Carter and Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin were gathered at Camp David in 1978. Now I know many of you remember those times. And they were there to discuss peace. And President Anwar Sadat approved the peace proposal, but it was rejected by the Israeli Prime Minister Begin. There was a stalemate. The three by now were tired and emotionally drained, and they were about to depart without any peace accord. And as President Carter and Prime Minister Begin were about to go, they remembered that they had earlier agreed to sign photographs for others' families. So they met on the front porch of Prime Minister Begin's cabin for the signing. President Carter asked for the name of the children before he signed, and so did the other two. And President Carter decided to show the photographs of his grandchildren, describing the personality of each, as did Prime Minister Begin. As they looked at the pictures, tears filled their eyes. What type of world would their grandchildren grow up in? Prime Minister Begin returned to his cabin and reemerged after 5 minutes, asking to look at the peace proposal once again. It was the children that led them to peace. Today we have riots all over the Middle East. Today we have an Iran threatening Israel. Today we have an American ambassador and 4 other Americans who were killed in Libya. We are hated by the Middle East, and there is a fanaticism evolving, and that has been evolving for quite a while in relationship to it. We have to do something about it. We have to learn that we as Christians have the power from God to bring rationality and healing and peace in this world. So how did Jesus challenge his disciples, and how is Jesus challenging you and me? He's challenging us to become servants. And it's interesting that the word for servant, which is servan, comes from the same root in Greek for servant and children. We have images of Jesus at the Last Supper. We have Jesus sitting around with the disciples and sharing the cup and the bread. We have an image of Jesus bathing the disciples' feet because he saw himself as a servant to all. And we also have the servant motif taken from 2nd Isaiah of the servant song today. And I know that was a long passage, but what it was about was the servant. And the servant had many images. First, in 2nd Isaiah, we have a prophecy that Jesus will come. He prophesied that Jesus would be born and Jesus would bring about his salvation for humankind. Jesus is seen not in his eyes as the new king, but in their eyes as the new king in which nations and kings would be silent and in awe. We also have the servant who is one who serves and is respectful and is respected by others. But in Old Testament Isaiah, we have a collective nation of Israel in which figuratively they are seen as the chosen people, in which God is their God and they are to be the servant to humankind. And that servant, which is kind of a poetic symbol, is described as a community of faithful people. And what is happening at that period of history, which is 587 BC, is these people are in exile. They are no longer allowed to go to their homes. They are in exile. And what they are doing by that servant motif is they are pointing back to David, who had a reign of profound spirituality, not all the time, but much of the time. And they are also pointing ahead to when Jesus will come and be born and will save them. All this is in 2nd Isaiah, and that is what the prophet knew was going to happen. So we are called at this time in history to become God's servants, so that God can act through us and can bring about some kind of fulfillment in the world. God doesn't want what's going on in the Middle East. God doesn't want what's going on in the corporate world. We in this modern world are called to be servants. And I'd like to just give you quickly an example in our modern world in which a corporate company had a servant motif in their leadership. And they said instead of dominating and controlling, they would change it to empowering and listening and having empathy and bringing about a spiritual side of leadership and living out a commitment to the growth of people. It doesn't matter if we're in the corporate world, if we're in the church world, if we're in the education world, or we're at work, or we're in our families, wherever we are. That is what Jesus is calling us to do. He is calling us to be servant angels, in which the last will be first, that children will be held up high, and that our land and our people, because we are Christians, will know God, and we will humbly serve. I'd like to close with a reading from the prophet on giving by Kahil Gibran. There are those who have little and give it all. These are the believers in life, in the bounty of life, and their coffer is never empty. There are those who give with joy, and that joy is their reward. And there are others who give with pain, and that pain is their baptism. There are those who give and know not pain in giving, nor do they seek joy, nor give with mindfulness of virtue. They give as in yonder valley, as the myrtle breathes its fragrance. Through the hands of these, God speaks. And from behind these eyes, God smiles upon the earth. Amen. Please join me in singing All Servants of God on your insert. This is the time in our service where we have the sharing of joys and concerns. Does anybody have something they would like to share with us today, either a joy or a concern? Oh, come on. There must be something here. I know that Diane and Paul are celebrating their 49th wedding anniversary, am I right? Which is what the flowers are all about up there. Anybody else? Joan Hanley's home. I know Joe's having a good time with his grandkids. I saw his wife this past week. Found out when he was coming back. I guess he'll be back Tuesday night, back in the office on Wednesday. So if you do have an emergency, you can call me if you need to. Call the church office or call Patty. She'll have my cell phone number. Anybody else? Back up here? Yeah? Okay. Anybody else? Back here, anybody? Well, I have a joy to share with you all. You haven't seen much of me this autumn because I have been out and about preaching. I made 2 trips to the Midwest, and I just got back. That's why I lost my voice. And I have been called to serve 2 yoke churches in Minnesota, and that will be beginning on January 1st. I will be their pastor. It's a big step, and I will say this. These churches, I was very impressed with these churches. They had a lot of backup money and endowments and investments, but their numbers were low, and they decided to yoke the 2 churches because they wanted to first, raise their numbers, and second, be able to afford a full-time pastor. And the two churches on their own could not. So by yoking, they were able to do that. And so my life is cut out for me. I live literally, I'd say that gray car out there to here is the parsonage to one of the churches. So it's pretty close, but it's pretty exciting, and they're really good people, and I honestly feel called to these churches. It was just something really clicked, and we will be leaving here on, I don't know, just before Christmas, and driving up and spending Christmas with our kids in Wisconsin, and then moving on to the church and settling in. You will see some of Richard and Tara, as Tara will be finishing, that's my daughter for those of you who are new, her year at SCF. She's in her second year of college, and Richard hates the cold, so he will be a snowbird. And they go, well, what is a snowbird? And I said, well, that's 4 months here and 8 months there. So we will be keeping our house, and I will be trying to take some vacations here, too. All right, so that's it, guys. And I just want to share that with you today. It's going to be hard to leave here, but it's time. And I thank y'all. I've made some good friends here. Huh? Oh, I already did that. Do we have any other concerns? I think that's it. All right, let us pray. Dear God, we come to you this day in need of rest and rejuvenation. We seek your outstretched hand in the darkness. We seek your kindness and understanding, and refreshment and clarity for our busy and demanding lives. We seek to follow you, Jesus, and to know your presence and strength every day of our lives. Grant us clarity so that we might solve our problems and make decisions guided by your will for wholeness in God. We especially ask your prayers for the family and the woman who is having trouble with her boy and girl. We ask that you grant strength to face life's challenges, and we ask that you grant us compassion and sensitivity to reach out and be present to those around us who need your love and grace. We live in a world of economic loss and unemployment, where we're seeking to help all in need, not just the homeless, so that all might have food and shelter. We live in a world where weather patterns are skewed. We live in a world where every day our men and women are on the front lines, striving to maintain freedom after 9/11. We live in a world where the growing conflicts of the Middle East echoes in anti-Americanism, where extremists of both cultures, Mideast and West, are the voices that destroy through irrationality and hate. Teach us, O God, how to respect other faiths, yet denounce fanaticism. Teach us not to fight in the name of religion, but to love and to be rational. Teach us, O God, how to live so that flowers can continue to bloom. We are a proud family. We are a proud people, proud of our families, proud of our lives, proud of our God. Make us worthy of your calling so that we might bring your healing grace to a world hungry for meaning, in need of God, a God that loves us, believes in us, and strengthens us, the vision for which we live. In Jesus, we seek to humbly walk. And now let us take a moment of silence for your private prayers. Creator God, please join with me. Creator God, you call us to love and serve you with body, mind, and spirit through loving your creation, the land, the people, the animals. Open our hearts in compassion so that we might reach out and bring your loving presence and gift of grace in a world learning to know you. Amen. And now the morning offering. and the sun shine warm upon your face, and the rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of God's